Hello and welcome to the third episode in this Rook School series entitled Rook Pawn Wins. So take a look at this position with white to move. How does white win here? So, a lot of games with one extra pawn can end in a draw when it comes to rook endings. And in this position, white has a win. So how does he go about doing this? Take a look, see if you can figure it out. And if you need more time at any point, just pause the video. But let's take a look here. All right. So in this position, with white to move, we have a little tactical trick that is well worth remembering because it could come up in some of your end games like this. So we see here that this black king is not close enough to the edge of the board over here, and he's also not close enough to help stop this pawn. And that's the problem, because white can play this move, rook to h8, and swing around on the other side of the king. Now, if the black rook doesn't capture this pawn, then the pawn will go on to promote, and the black rook will have to capture, and then white's rook will recapture, and white will just win, with that extra rook. So most likely your opponent would just capture. And then we have this tactical trick where you just skewer the king. Once the king moves, the rook will be picked off here. So, we'll just have something like this. Then you capture and you go on to win with rook and king versus king. So, one more look at that. So the black king needs to either be on g7 or h7, towards the edge of the board, so the rook can't swing around and get in behind the king or on the other side of the king. Or the king needs to be over here, trying to help stop this pawn from being able to promote. But since the black king is just stuck in the middle here, we have this tactic, getting around on the other side of the king. If the king just goes after the rook with something like this, well, then the pawn can just promote to a queen, and now you're guarding the rook and attacking here. So what do? Just get rid of the queen, but then the rook can capture, so white would be winning. So anyway, you get the picture. You move the rook to the other side of the king, and after the capture, you just attack the king. Once he moves, you pick off the rook. All right, let's take a look at another example where rook pawns that are usually very drawish. We'll look at another example where you can actually win. So let's take a look here, the second example, and let me hide the analysis here. So we see, white is definitely winning. Maybe something didn't come out right here. All right, let's go back to the beginning of this problem. All right. So here we have another example where it's white's turn to move. And, what does white do here? He needs to try and promote that pawn to get the win. So let's take a look. Try and figure out what you would do in this position if you were white. And think about that for a moment. Pause the video if you need to. If not, let's continue if you think you know what to play. And we'll take a look here. All right. So in this position, the king moves up, cutting off black's king and trying to aim towards the passed pawn and help that pawn promote. So what does black do here? He has different options. The computer gives king to e6 as the best move. Before we take a look at that, well, I guess we could go ahead and look at that now. So king to e6. Let's say the king just moves up there. Well, now we have king to b6, protecting the pawn and relieving the rook of guard duty here. So now what? King to d7, moving up here, which prevents the rook from checking, or does it? Because if the rook moved and the king captured, then the pawn could just promote with check. So maybe we have something like, I don't know, rook to h8. The rook just moves away and the pawn will promote. So after this move, the king could just move up here to b7, or what's another option? Even king moving down here, but no matter what, the pawn will promote. So we see that that doesn't work. So back to the initial position. All right, so king to c5, cutting off the black king. King to e6 didn't work. King to e4 doesn't seem like that's any better, although the computer's saying that's the best move now. But now you could move up here and attack the rook. What does the rook do? Maybe move away here. But now we have rook to e8, check. And then the pawn will be able to promote. So, maybe a better move would have been, instead of rook to h7, the computer gives this move, rook to e5, protecting the king from checks. But once again, we could just move away and that pawn will promote. I don't know, the best move given by the computer is either to check our king or just move behind the pawn, but the pawn will promote. You'd have to sacrifice the rook for the promoted pawn. So, I guess we could look at this move, check. The king will just move here. And now what? You would just have to get behind the passed pawn, but the pawn would promote. All right, so back to the main line now. So king to c5, cutting off the black king. What if we had a check here? Now the computer says that is the best move. Well, then you can just move up here, attacking the rook and protecting the pawn at the same time. So now, maybe rook to e7 to prevent a check on our king. But we can do this move, which cuts off the black king, moves out of the way of the pawn so it can promote. And, where does black continue here? What does black do? You could just go ahead and give up your rook for the pawn. You could try and check here. But now the king can just move, to b5. And now the rook can't even get in behind the pawn. So, maybe something like this. And then the pawn will promote. So another example of, a way for white to win here with this rook pawn. Okay, we'll take a look at one more example. Let's see here. Let me make sure I turn off the analysis here, or at least hide it. So there. All right. Okay, so here we go. Once again, wait a minute. Sorry about that. I don't know why it did that. Usually it resets back to the initial positions, but it kind of just started in the middle or the end of the positions that I brought up. Okay, here we go. So, what does white do here? How does white try and achieve the win? Take a look at this, see if you can figure it out. Pause if you need more time, and if not, let's see here. All right, so white is definitely winning, and it looks like the winning move, hopefully you found it, is rook to b8. So rook to b8, a great move here, which, one, it directly attacks the rook, forcing this rook to, move, to do something, or it'll just be picked off. If it captures, then you recapture with the pawn and promote, of course. So the computer gives rook to a1, h1, or c1, saying they're all even, but white is winning. But how do you go about achieving the win? So rook to c1, then this allows the king to come out from in front of the pawn that it's blocking. So the king moves to b7. Now, one option is rook to c7, checking immediately like this. But that would allow the king to just move out of the way, maybe something like this. And, you wouldn't want to check here because then white could just block. Or would that work? Let's take a look at that. Let's see here. What does it say about this move? So we go there. We have a check. And now what? What do you do next? Well, you either have to capture or ignore that, or the king would move. But either way, because now the rook is pinned to your king, white would be winning. So the best move given is to just go ahead and capture. Then the king would capture and the pawn would promote. So we don't want to do that. If we go back, king to a6 there, and then it looks like better would be something like retreating back here, but then you could just go ahead and promote the pawn. And what do you do then? Check, and then the king will just run away. So I don't know, you could run down towards the rook, or you could just run away in this direction. But the rook would probably give itself up for the queen, and once again white would be winning. So let's go back to the beginning and take a look here at how can black put up the most resistance. All right, so white moves here, forcing this rook to make a decision. The rook moves here, the best move according to the computer. Rook to c1. The king moves out from in front of its pawn, freeing the path of this pawn to promotion. And so now we have check. The king has options here. The computer recommends king to a6 or even a8. But another option is to run up here to c8. So let's take a look at that real quick. Well, maybe before I go into that move, let's look at these top moves. King to a8, you don't want to go back up there and just block your pawn again. King to a6, it gives that move. But then you just have a check. The king would move where, to b7 or b6, and then we're going to have a check again. So, if we go there, you're just going to have another check. And now what? You don't want to go back and forth. So now the computer is recommending this king to c8 move. So if we go back, all the way to the beginning and just take a quick look, the rook attacks black's rook. The rook moves, the king moves out. We have a check. And now we saw that king to c8 is a better move than what the computer is giving here, only +5. So we try that move, king to c8. Looks like rook to c1. You just continue checking. But now what? The king just moves behind black's own king, creating some cover. And now rook to h1 threatens a mate here with rook to h8 checkmate. So you have to watch out for that threat and not promote your pawn or you're getting mated. So now we have this interesting series of moves. Rook to b6. Checking black's king. So now what does black do? Move here, going after the rook. But let's see what we do next. Now, rook checks again. So this is tricky stuff here. If we capture, well then the pawn would promote to a queen, checking the king, and when the king moves, we would pick off their rook. So that's something to watch out for. So the king just moves over, and now we have rook to c8. Because if we promote it immediately, well then the rook could move up with check and pick off the promoted pawn. So another thing to keep in mind. All right, so now we play this move, guarding the queening square. And now this also cuts off the black king from heading towards the center. But we have rook to h8 check. Or, if the computer recommends getting behind the pawn, but you could just go ahead and promote. Promote the pawn. And if they capture, you're just ahead by a rook. And here, what should you do? It gives this move. And now, what? You could just capture here. Or excuse me, move here with check. The king would move up. And what now? You either capture here or hold on to your rook. But white would be winning. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed these rook pawn wins, because a lot of times the rook pawns can lead to draws. And I hope you join me in the future rook school videos, because the rook endings are some of the most common endings in chess, and the more you learn about them, the better you can play these end games, and you'll have more opportunities to win or save a draw if you study these endings. All right, well, please like and subscribe for those that haven't already. Feel free to leave comments, suggestions, or any requests if there is something you'd like to see in the future. Thanks for watching, and have a super chess day.